Are we on? We're on. Yeah, I just wanted to speak to those who watch us online. Next Thursday is going to be the last one for the summer. And then I will come back in late August or early September. We'll pick up again where we left off. I'm going to work through some of the preparation this summer to get ahead. So be patient with us. But we've got all of our lessons archived online. And we'll get back going in August or September and have a great summer. God bless you. Okay. So speaking to all the 3 people and my mother who watch this. So let's open with a word of prayer, and then we'll get into the lesson of the day. Lord, we thank you so much as we are beginning to come down to the time of summer. We'll be traveling different places and doing different things, and we pray, Lord, for traveling mercies upon our class wherever we may go. And for those who are watching us, Lord, we pray for them as well. Keep us in your loving care. Thank you, Lord, for the gift of John's vision, which we discover is so much informs our faith, more than we ever realize in terms of our hymns and how we preach and what we preach from and the vision that we're given. So it is our vision, Lord, as well as John's, and we share it with him. So help us, Lord, to learn as we come together to be students of your word, to understand and to apply what we learn to our lives. Thank you for all good gifts. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Okay, I have an outline to hand out. Hey, Leon, how are you? So I'm going to just ask, Doug, will you grab this, if you don't mind, please, and pass it out? I don't think I handed you this yet. So if you would take that, go ahead, grab the whole thing and just pass it out. It's our outline of the 7 seals, chapter 6, all the way through chapter 6. And while you're getting that, and that's yours to keep. I'll have more of them if you lose it when you come back. Okay, so thank you. Thank you very much. So it's just the usual, every time I do these outlines, what impresses me is how structured John wrote. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's really amazing. We'll look at it in just a second, but it's just amazing to me how intentionally parallel everything is. I mean, have you ever seen writing like that before? It's like a mathematical formula. It's like a combination of equation and word. It's really amazing. And to think that's written in ancient Greek 2,000 years ago, which kind of shows you that how literary human culture had already become in that time. Quite amazing to me. It really is. We'll look at that in a minute. So we're going to look at the 7 seals. I have this nice illustration here on the board. And as you can see, there's the Lamb in the lap of the Lord on the throne. And all the things that we're about to read about. There's the cherubim. There are the elders around the throne. And there's the 4 beasts there. So everything's there that we've already kind of looked at. As we're going to, wait, here comes Billy, I think. We'll just wait for Billy to come in as well.
You think about 2,000 years ago, and you kind of think, well, these people couldn't have been as smart as we were. They couldn't be because...
Ask the Egyptians.
And yet, as we study, the Egyptians and other aspects, the Mayans, the mathematical equations, the way the Mayans work math, and the astronomy that we've seen now through more than 2,000 years. It's an amazing thing to...
Okay, come on, roll forward. Go ahead, Jim.
It's an amazing thing to realize just how smart these people were, and when you read John and you read the logic that he put toward his writing.
I know.
And these people weren't going for degrees either. They weren't just...
But I mean, like, if you think about the fact, and I think this is still the case, modern engineering still has not figured out yet how the pyramids were built. How they got it to that, or have they figured it out?
Well, there's a channel...
they're working on it.
They're working on it, yeah.
There's a channel on TV that's got it all figured out. Aliens.
Alien, well, yeah.
Yeah, the aliens.
It's funny that we can't give credit to human culture itself. It's gotta be, yeah, it's gotta be aliens, which is really a cop-out, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it. But at the same time, what's amazing, I think about this, 2,000 years later, why are we not that much forward than we ought to be in our thinking? I mean, maybe we are, I guess, if you think of the modern developments, but 2,000 years seemed like when they were there, we would be like way ahead. Maybe there is an actual capacity to the amount that we can think things out. I don't know. Maybe there's a limit. I don't know. I don't know much about the theory of knowing. I guess that's epistemology. I don't know.
Well, I think technology has taken dramatic improvement, even in the last couple hundred years.
Yeah. Well, the last couple of hundred years have been amazing.
Last 50 years.
But philosophy.
Yep, since we were kids. Yes.
Space exploration.
Yeah.
But logic is logic.
What were you saying?
I said, but philosophy.
Philosophy. Yeah.
Well, we go right back to the ancient Greeks.
Yep. Logic is yeah, exactly. We still build our logical.
We still study Plato and Socrates.
I'm saying we build upon them.
Right.
It's quite amazing to me. So, all right, let's go then and read. Let's read the seven seals, or the start of it. And I have it up here, but you can read in your text if you wish. Then I saw the Lamb open one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures call out, as with a voice of thunder, "Come!" And I looked, and there was a white horse. Its rider had a bow, a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature call out, "Come!" And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people would slaughter one another, and he was given a great sword. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature call out, "Come!" I looked, and there was a black horse. Its rider held a pair of scales in his hand, and I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a day's pay, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's pay, but do not damage the olive oil and the wine." When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature call out, "Come!" I looked, and there was a pale green horse. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed with him. They were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, famine, and pestilence, and by the wild animals of the earth. So this is as far as we're going right now. In fact, I didn't even get through to the fourth seal yet in my working ahead. But if we get to the first 3, that's good enough, because there's a lot to talk about here that's going on. First, I want us to look at the outline, just again to see this remarkable, when you outline these passages, how amazingly consistent they are in structure and organization. I just looked over, just took a glance to look over at the A, then the ones, then the ABCs, then the 1-2s, then the 2s, then the ABCs, and the 1. I mean, everything is so logically patterned together. So I give you that outline just to show you how structured this vision is. The Lamb breaks the first 6 seals, then A, the first 4 seal visions, verses 1 through 8. Then 1, the first seal, the vision. The Lamb breaks the first seal. B, one of the 4 cherubim summons the first horseman. C, there's the vision of the first horseman. Then under that, the description of the horseman, mounted on a white horse, wielding a bow. 2, the action of the horseman. He is given a crown, and he rides out to conquer. Now the second seal. The Lamb breaks the second seal. The second cherub summons the second horseman. Now there's the vision of the second horseman. 1, description, mounted on a fiery red horse. Action, the horseman is given power to remove peace from the earth, that people might slaughter each other, to remove peace from the earth. The horseman is given a large sword. Now the third seal. The Lamb breaks the third seal. The third cherub dispatches the third horseman. Visions of the third horseman. Description, mounted on a black horse, holding a balance scale. A divine commission is given. Now we kind of change the pattern a little bit. A divine commission is given to the horseman. Source of commission, a voice from the midst of the four cherubim. Content of the commission, a liter of wheat for a denarius, 3 liters of barley for 1 denarius. Do not harm the oil and the wine. We're going to be talking about that. The 4th seal. The Lamb breaks the 4th seal. The 4th cherub summons the 4th horseman. Vision of the 4th horseman and his companion. Description of the horseman. Of course, that's Death and Hades. Mounted on a pale-colored horse. His name is Death. Hades followed him. Death and Hades given authority over 1/4 of the earth. Proportionality is extremely important to Revelation. There's never a final judgment yet, at least not yet. Everything's in proportion. Mounted on a to kill with the sword, to kill with famine, to kill with plague, to kill with the wild animals of the earth. And then we do have the 5th seal. Now the 5th seal, everything shifts. The Lamb breaks the 5th seal, vision of the souls of the martyrs. We've now moved from judgment to something different. Location under the heavenly altar, cause of the martyrdom, 1, because of the word of God, and 2, because of the witness they bore. 3, the martyrs pray for vengeance. A, they cry out loudly. B, their collective prayer, invocation, O Master, holy and true, petition. How long until you avenge our deaths caused by those who dwell on earth? And then God responds. Each martyr is given a white robe. Exhortation to the martyrs, rest a little while longer until the number of martyrs is complete. Then their fellow servants, their brothers who would be slain as they were. And now we come to this, now how different that is from the first 4 seals. And now the 6th seal. The Lamb breaks the 6th seal. Cosmic upheavals. A great earthquake occurs. The sun disturbed the event, it becomes dark. The simile as haircloth. The moon disturbed, the event becomes red. The simile as blood. Stars disturbed. See how, again, consistent. The event, the stars of heaven fall to earth as a tree loses unripe figs. That's the simile, when shaken by a strong wind. And then the destruction of heaven. The event, heaven disappears from sight. The simile, like a scroll rolled up. Then every mountain and island is shaken from its place. And then we see the human reactions in this 6th seal. Everyone is affected. Here's the affected ones. 1, important people. 2, generals. 3, the wealthy. 4, the powerful. 5, every slave. 6, every free person. That's interesting, the way how the hierarchy works there. We'll talk about that probably next fall. Everyone tries to hide in caves, in the mountains, and the rocks. Their collective cry of despair, addressed to the mountains and to the cliffs. And what are they asking? Fall on us, hide us, from the one who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. And then motivation. The day of wrath has come. Who is able to withstand? So when we get to the 7th seal, then we start seeing 7 trumpets, 7 horns, 7 this, 7 that. So now it's like geometrically it divides. It's like cell division, like that. So any thoughts about the outline that struck you? So you can see the judgment what we're looking at today comes with the first 4 seals, correct? But then when we get to the 5th and 6th seal, things shift. Things then move to the martyrs, then things move to creation as creation reflects judgment. As creation becomes a means of judgment itself, okay? Because you can fight an army, but what can you do when creation begins to fall apart? What do? You run and you hide, right? You duck and cover, and it still doesn't work, right? So, so it's interesting how this is spread out. Okay, so any questions so far about anything? Well, let's go on and move to the slide. Now, I want to make some notes here. First, the scroll is not actually opened until all 7 seals are removed. Each seal itself represents a judgment, okay? So you're not seeing the scroll unwritten. What you're seeing is each seal done, and each seal, something happens. But when we get to the last seal and it's open, then comes the unrolling of the judgment. Now we're looking on the inside of the document, okay? So we need to be aware of that.
Why is there only 6?
What's that?
Why is there only 6 seals?
Because the 7th seal, being the last one, is the one that you open up the scroll with. The 7th seal, these seals serve a purpose each upon themselves.
What?
But the 7th seal is the last seal that's broken to open up the scroll. And then when you open up the scroll, then we start seeing the pattern of 7 in the scroll. Yeah. I mean, what I'm hoping you get from this, as we continue to study, starting from the beginning to now, is the overall I'm getting the sense of the pattern that John was presenting in the vision. Starting with, let's just run this real quick, the inaugural vision, the 7 churches, then John is lifted up to heaven, and then we see the creation, the God of creation on the throne, right? And a hymn of praise for creation. Then we move to the Lamb, who is the investiture of the Lamb, who's given the task of unrolling the scrolls. So you see, everything is logically unwound. Yes?
What I don't see in here is why this should be interpreted as judgment, as the final judgment.
But see, that's what I'm saying. It's not the final judgment.
Okay.
You're seeing, and that's why we want to talk about proportionality as an extremely, see, you don't see proportionality in Jewish apocalyptic. You don't see a quarter of the earth stricken. When it happens to everyone and everything in Jewish apocalyptic. You don't see partial and partials and partials. But in Christian apocalyptic, you see partials. Why do you think that would be the case?
Well, to me, I look at all of this, the description of the plagues and all of that stuff, and it's like, this was going on at the time John was writing.
Yes.
And it just repeats itself and repeats itself.
Yes.
Every generation thinks, oh, they're talking about my generation.
Yeah.
And so to me, if you're talking proportionality, it's because it's not the end.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
There's more to come.
Yes. Yeah. And even more so because you have, according to Christian theology, a church upon the earth. And that church is going to be saved. That church is going to be saved. Therefore, God will not destroy everything. Whereas in Jewish apocalyptic, there's no sense of salvation in that. None. It's not presented that way. It doesn't have that, they don't have that theology. It's just, here's what's going to happen when God judges everything and everyone. We, on the other hand, have Christ, the Redeemer. And the Redeemer never renders final judgment until the end. Until the end. So, so what would be the purpose of proportionality? To awaken everyone, right? To awaken. Because time, this is what I want you to get the sense of here. The whole point of the unfolding in patterns is to say everyone is given a chance to see and believe. Everyone. And by the time you get to the obvious end, this isn't what we're in right now, let's say, but by the time we get to the obvious end of things, how can you not believe, is the question. So those who are left have made the active choice of choosing against God. Choosing against God. Rather than being passive and God just judging them. They've made an active choice. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Because as history unfolds, everything continues to point toward the Creator, God. Now this is, again, faith history. We're not talking about human history, cultural history. We're talking about faith history. Things continue to point to God. And to belief and these type of things. So it's like the proportionality is a sermon. Do you believe this or not? You know, do you know which, you know, are you going to believe or not? You know, as you see judgment, you know, I mean, like I said, as you see us constantly strive to create that which we simply cannot create, the perfect world, the end of hunger, the end of illness, the end of death, the end of death. That's not going to happen. Does anybody think we're going to end death? Anybody? We're going to end death.
Well, I think there's a bill in the House right now.
Let me know if it passes, okay? Let me know if it passes. But we're not going to end death. And so the point I'm making is that there are inevitabilities, terminations and inevitabilities to human culture and society. Inevitabilities, right? That's not saying we don't get better and better. We do. We do. And we live longer. But we don't stop death. You know? And some might argue, well, that's fine. That's great. But it still robs us. It's still, you know, we still struggle and suffer here upon this earth. So what is there, the question is asked, what is there beyond suffering besides death? Is there anything else? Because if our lot in life is simply to suffer and die, if that's it, you know, that's it, then, you know, what do we say about that? How do we answer that? Christianity, Christ came and said, no, your end is not to suffer and die. Your end is to live in faith and live. To have a spiritual life that extends beyond creation. God the Creator, Christ the Redeemer. So anyway, that's theology right there. But so let's take a look at the introduction here. So the stage is set for the opening of the scroll in sequence. Seals, then trumpets, then bowls. 7 seals, and out of the 7th seal, 7 trumpets and 7 bowls. Okay? And with each revelation, something proportionally happens. Okay? Scroll is not actually opened until all 7 seals are removed. Each seal represents a preliminary judgment. If you might even be able to say, these judgments are the things we bring. I mean, where does death and war and pestilence and famine come from? Where do they come from? Us.
Yeah.
We create them. How many are dying of hunger today? And there's certainly enough food to feed them. Why are they dying of hunger then? Why?
We don't distribute it.
Why?
We don't distribute it.
Yeah, why?
It's our failing.
Yes.
It's not like a logistics problem.
It's our failing. The problem is us, not the world, not what God has created. And now we're really messing it up good, aren't we? I mean, we are to some degree messing it up. So which is not a surprise. So it's like I'm saying, we are constantly working. Yes.
Before you launch,
Okay.
I can't find the 7th seal.
It'll come in chapter 8. Let's see, at the end of chapter 7. It's chapter 7, the beginning of chapter 7.
8.
I'm sorry, chapter 8, is that when it's open?
7th seal opened.
Okay, chapter 8.
Yep.
So it's a ways ahead. There's a lot to go in between, so. All right, my fault, I'm sorry. Okay, so let's begin now at the sections of the passage and what these sections look like. Revelation 6, 1 through 17 is what we're looking at now. First, the 4 horsemen, 1 through 8. Then the martyrs' cry for vengeance, 9 through 11. And then the day of wrath, which is the natural disasters, the natural world falling apart, 12 through 17. And do we still experience natural disasters that kill us? But we haven't had one that's wiped the whole world out yet, has it? Nope. We're working on it, but we're not there yet, okay? We're not there yet. So what I'm saying is that's why we are post-millennialist. We think this is the unfolding of the vision now, rather than all this is going to come later. We think we're in that unfolding. That's where that comes from. We're not premillennialists, we're post-millennialists. I have the hardest time. Millennialist, right? My tongue doesn't work real good anymore. So anyway, okay, first four seals, it's grounded in, by the way, this is grounded in Zechariah 7, 1 through 11. Zechariah 1, 7 through 11. We'll be looking at that in a few minutes. The first horseman is an agent of divine judgment and carries a bow. The next three horsemen are what we call the first horseman's arrows. So, there's an intentional image here. The first horseman has a bow, right? Given a bow, right? His arrows are the next three horsemen. Yeah, that's his arrows. That they're being aimed at the world, or at humanity. 3 arrows. Okay, we'll see that as we go forward. And then the martyr's cry for vengeance and the day of wrath. Okay, so the visions are introduced by the opening of the seal. Then I saw the Lamb open one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures call out, as with a voice of thunder, come. They're divided into subgroups, 4 of 4. 6, 1 through 8, and then subgroups of 3, 9 through 17, and 8, 1. And if you add 4 plus 3, what do you get? 7, exactly. So here again is that structural. Similar to the 4-3 structure found later in the trumpet visions. We get the same 4-3 structure again. So it's consistent, okay?
Show me the arrows.
What?
Show me the arrows.
Well, this is again interpreting the metaphors.
Okay.
A bow is given. Well, if you give the white horse a bow, they're going to be arrows. So metaphorically, the arrows are what comes out afterwards.
Okay.
Remember, these are metaphors. These are metaphors. So
No wonder I don't understand.
yeah. I mean, sometimes you're not going to see what the arrows are, but you have to assume that they are. Because if someone's given a bow, they're going to be arrows, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. So we have to sometimes,
Teacher, student.
Okay. No, you're fine. This is complex stuff. It's a good question. I didn't realize this until the commentary told me this. I've never seen this before. The new commentary that I've got said, here is one way to interpret the fact that the white horse comes out first and is given a crown, right? That's not a negative image, is it? A crown and a bow, but what comes out that follows is terrifying judgments. Those have got to be the arrows. So that's just an interpretation. There are so many ways to interpret these. And I thought it was kind of cool. That's why I put it in. I thought that was kind of a cool image. So it could be, now this is interesting, it could be an expression of a hierarchy in heaven, which is something we haven't seen so far explicitly in Revelation. Now, in Jewish apocalyptic, there is always a hierarchy. There's always a God at the top, and then you've got the archangels, then you've got angels, cherubim, and dove. Here, you've got one of the 4 living creatures calling out, right? Not God, not the Lamb, calling out, and the horseman comes out. So that's an order that's being given. Come. So the initiate,
Why it's hard for me to envision, and I'm having the same trouble Al is, to see the 3 arrows next after the first horseman, is because in my life I've always seen the 4 horsemen.
Right. We're going to look at some of those.
I've never seen
Yes.
the 3 and 1. I've always seen the 4 together coming.
So what we're learning here is that the first horseman is very distinct from the other 3. And that's something we don't realize. And that's why we look at it closely. Because the first horseman horseman does not render a judgment. The first horseman initiates the judgment. The 3 horsemen that follow actually do it. See what I mean? The first horseman doesn't bring famine. or any of the things that come out, death or Hades, that the first horseman is a conqueror. So we'll talk about that as we move forward, okay? So this hierarchy thing is very interesting because we just don't see that in Revelation until this point. And we rarely see it at all. The come is directed at the first horseman with a sound like thunder. It is a loud command. It is an imperative command. It's not a request. It's an imperative command. So it's interesting. We ask the question, well, why would the cherubim do that? Why would one of the four living creatures do that? It seems that if we go back to the previous part of the four living creatures, they initiated worship, remember? Mm-hmm. And they closed worship. At the end of the investment of Jesus, they were the ones that said, they closed worship, and then the elders responded, amen. So they're initiators of these things. They seem to be initiators of these things. Okay, so here we go. Let's look at the four. Here we go. Here we go. The four. Now, here's what we think about, guys. Here's what we think about. See? Here's what we think about.
Right.
And frankly, okay, look at this. Look a little closer. I don't see an arrow there, interestingly enough. But there are the three, okay? And so that's why we need to make a distinction between them, because the last three are very much related to each other, but the first one's not. The first one's not. It's a different kind of image. But of course, what you're talking about, I wanted to show you, is very common in our culture. The cultural appropriations of the four horsemen. And this is actually from a premillennial document. These are the four horsemen. Which one's the white horse? I don't know. Don't ask me. But this is an example of trying to apply history to these images. And this is what you get. Now you could go back and see this in every generation over and over again. Can't you? It could have been King John's there, or Napoleon. Maybe at the beginning of the 20th century, it would have been, or early 20th century, it would have been Hitler and Marx and whoever else you want to throw up there, right? Right. So, and notice it's never us, right? It's never us. It's always others, right? So I thought that was kind of funny. That's why I wanted to show that to you. There's some other ones as well. Now here is some of the paintings I was talking about. That this is from a game. This is from a video game. A video game about the apocalypse. There is so much apocalyptic imagery today in movies and films. The Marvel series, The Avengers, is filled with apocalyptic imagery. Filled with it. It's just all over the place. So even though those watching the movies may have no idea about Revelation whatsoever, they're actually watching things sourced from Revelation. Here's an example. I didn't get the bottom, but here's the interpretation. War, cyberspace, I love it, death, and what is that? I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
Communication?
No, it's not communication. It's
Not communication.
Conflagration, no, it's not.
it could be communication. Actually, it could be communication. Come to think of it. Well, whatever it is, it's a modern interpretation it's trying to take the four images and apply them. I mean, cyberspace. I don't know. I never thought of cyberspace as equivalent to death. I know war associates to death. Cyberspace doesn't? I don't know, It's like, I don't know. Okay, so, and here's the four horsemen of Notre Dame. That's great, it's great. So which one is death? Which one is the white horse? Which one, I mean, these have been metaphors in our culture for centuries. So we have made metaphorical interpretations, right? I mean, in my time, we had the four horsemen of the National Wrestling Association, And they were called the four horsemen, and they delivered doom to whoever they wrestled. I love that stuff. I love it. I love it when they use Revelation imagery in modern stuff, you know? Because I hope it kind of inspires people to look that up. Where does that come from? You know, I'm kind of optimistic in that way. Can you think of some others? Can you think of some other four horsemen images that you've seen before? I saw it in the wrestling world. And then we see it there. Can you think of some other images that you've seen?
Well, they crop up in westerns.
Oh, good.
With the bad guys on four horses.
Very good. Very good. Dressed in the colors sometimes. Of course, black in Western mythology always represents evil. The bad guy.
Lone Ranger.
Oh, there you go. There you go. There you
That's
go.
not four.
Huh?
That's not
Oh, yeah, but you could go Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, and then one more.
Yeah, but Dale
Tom
Evans.
Hanks. Well, Tom Hanks would be.
Dale Evans is death. That's all I got to say. Now, Dale Evans was a sweetheart. She was a Christian sweetheart. But yeah, I mean, you can think of other cultural appropriations that are done. If you look them up, if you look in Google and type in the Four Horsemen, you will see stuff unbelievable. It's all over the place. Okay. So we even may create our own Four Horsemen, can't we? It's not hard to do. I put theology. No, I'm just kidding. So if I put a church Four Horsemen, let's see, session. All right, staff. Preaching on Sunday. But anyway, let's take a look now at the motifs that these come from that are based upon. This is Zechariah. I talked about Zechariah 1. This is Zechariah 1. And yeah, we do start at the top there. This is Zechariah 1, 8 through 17. And this is the motif that John uses to base this image on. In the night I saw a man riding on a red horse. He was standing among the myrtle trees in the glen, and behind him were red, sorrel, and white horses. Sorrel is black, correct? Isn't that dark? Isn't sorrel black?
I thought it was a reddish color.
Okay. And white horse. Then I said, what are these, my Lord? The angel who talked with me said to me, I will show you who they are, what they are. So the man, an angel. See, there's that hierarchical. It's an angel talking. So the man who was standing among the myrtle trees answered, they are those whom the Lord has sent to patrol the earth. Interesting. Then they spoke to the angel of the Lord who was standing among the myrtle trees. We have patrolled the earth, and lo, the whole earth remains at peace. Then the angel of the Lord said, O Lord of hosts, how long will you withhold mercy from Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, with which you have been angry these 70 years? Then the Lord replied with gracious and comforting words to the angel who talked with me. So the angel who talked with me said to me, proclaim this message. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I am very jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion, and I am extremely angry with the nations that are at ease. For while I was only a little angry, they made the disaster worse. Therefore, thus says the Lord, I have returned to Jerusalem with compassion. My house shall be built in it, says the Lord of hosts, and the measuring line shall be stretched over Jerusalem. Proclaim further, thus says the Lord of hosts, my city shall again overflow with prosperity. The Lord will again comfort Zion and again choose Jerusalem. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about, of Jewish apocalyptic. There is no call to repentance here. Zero. There's just, this is going to happen. That's all there is. And that's what you see. That is a constant, as opposed to John's new understanding of apocalyptic, which has an evangelical thrust to it, if you want to put it that way, evangelical thrust. So that there you can see, and the color of the horses themselves are based upon this passage. Some of the in 6:1-8, some of the other colors. Well, you'll see as we go through it. And again, I looked up and saw 4 chariots coming out from between 2 mountains of bronze. The first chariot had red horses. The second chariot black horses. The third chariot white horses, and the fourth chariot dappled gray horses. Then I said to the angel who talked with me, what are these, my Lord? The angel answered me, these are the 4 winds of heaven going out, after presenting themselves before the Lord of all the earth. The chariot with the black horses goes toward the north country, the white ones go toward the west country, and the dappled ones go toward the south country. When the steeds came out, they were impatient to get off and patrol the earth. And he said, go patrol the earth. So they patrolled the earth. Then he cried out to me, lo, those who go toward the north country have set my spirit at rest in the north country. So if you look at the difference between the two purposes, the one that we see here in Zechariah and the one that we see John, what is the difference that we see? For Zechariah, what are the four horsemen? What did the four horsemen or the four different colored horses, what do they basically do? What is their task?
Reign terror.
Create peace.
No, but they're going directions, different directions, one goes north, south.
What does it say they're doing?
Creating peace.
Presenting themselves before the Lord of all the earth.
No, but that's not, what are they doing when they go out? What does it say they're doing?
Patrolling.
They're patrolling.
Patrolling.
What does that word mean, that they're patrolling? What do you think about when you think about patrol?
Do they report back?
Security.
Okay, there's reporting back. What else is there? When you think about a policeman patrolling,
Security.
observing, and sometimes acting. Whereas, what about the four horsemen in John? What are they doing? Are they patrolling?
They're wreaking havoc.
They're wreaking havoc. Yes.
They're conquering.
They are out working. They're out doing stuff.
Yeah.
They're not patrolling. They have a specific assignment to them. And why? What's the difference? Because the Messiah has come. And now there's no longer this waiting and watching. There's then this action. Things are unfolding now. Things are unfolding, okay? The Messiah initiates that. That's the whole vision of the Lamb, the investiture of the Lamb. The Messiah and his death upon the cross and his resurrection initiates all this now. All this. Okay. So the first horseman can be interpreted. The first horseman, as we look at the first horseman, okay, can be interpreted, and I'm talking about the four horsemen, can be interpreted positively or negatively. It can be either way. It can be either way. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Here's the positive, okay? If we think of later on in Revelation, we see when the next white horse is revealed. This is much later in Revelation, around Revelation 19. Okay, we'll read it in a second. Revelation 19. That's Christ on the horse. Christ on the horse. So that's a very positive image. Christ is the divine warrior. Here it is. Then I saw heaven open, and there was a white horse. Its rider is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and on his head are many diadems. And he has a name inscribed that no one knows but himself. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called what?
Word of God.
Word of God. And the armies of heaven, wearing fine linen, white and pure, were following him on the white horses. For from his mouth comes what? A sharp sword with which to strike down the nations. And he will rule them with a rod of iron. He will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God the Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh, he has a name inscribed, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So this is not the white horse of the four horsemen. Clearly, it's different. But it is certainly a white horse triumphant. Okay? A white horse triumphant. Now, as you look at, we'll get to Revelation 19 many years from now, but as you look at it, I mean, clearly these are metaphors for what? I mean, if we're going to talk about, I mean, should we take literally that the white horse judges and makes war? If the white horse does make war, how does the white horse, the rider, fight it? How is that war fought? It's given to us right here.
The sword.
Which is what? What's the sword?
That's the word.
The word. The word, see? The sword's not chopping off heads. It's what we do in church. It's the word. It's the word. And so, and then what is it? He's clothed in a robe dipped in blood. Well, what is the blood? Where's the blood come from?
That's the sacrifice.
That's the sacrifice. The blood of the lamb. Yes. See, so these are all images of things that happened. Christ went to the cross, Christ rose again, and now we as the church, how do we conquer in the world? How do we live in the world? Through the Word. What does conquer mean for us? Making disciples of all nations. That's what it means. We conquer through our asylum shelter. See?
Yeah.
So this is part of the struggle with Revelation. John's vision uses these incredible warlike images, but they're for things we don't even think about as war. But spiritually, it is warfare. See? Spiritually, it is warfare. Does that make sense? Because, I mean, are we not fighting forces when we have the asylum shelter? Are we not fighting against other forces? Are we not fighting against other forces with our food pantry? With the resource center? With our mission? Because what are we fighting against? With the food pantry, what are we fighting against? Hunger. Yes. So we can make our own metaphors, our own images from this, couldn't we? This is the image John uses for the church, for what we do. And that's why instead of setting this out in some futuristic, imagined, realistic image, this is what we do. This is what we are doing right now. See? But there will be an end to the fight. That's what the whole point of Revelation. There will be an end to the fight. One day. There will be an end to the fight. Now, how will that end come? Jesus himself said, I don't know. They kept asking him, when will I be there? He said, I don't know. It's not my decision. So maybe the end comes with our death. I don't know. For us, at least, it comes with our death. I don't know. What does that mean? But we're not going to worry about it, okay? I mean, that's not ours to worry about how that unfolds, okay? Because it's not in our hands. There are many dissimilarities between the two images. Okay, let's go back. Many dissimilarities. The bow versus the sharp two-edged sword. The bow is the bow has arrows. The sharp two-edged sword, which is a metaphor for judgment, for the word, is an image of the gladius, which was the sword carried by the Roman soldiers. Yeah, the centurions. The Lamb is opening the seals. That is in the earlier image. Messiah, not expected to appear before the completion of all the judgments. The Messiah is not expected to actually appear. So when we see that rider, that's not the Messiah. That's not. And furthermore, it wouldn't make sense to be the Messiah because it's the cherub that says, come. Cherub doesn't need to call out the Messiah. The Messiah just comes out. And then it's also an image of the second one, is an image of the victory of the gospel. If you look at Mark 13:10, and the good news must first be proclaimed to all the nations. That's an apocalyptic kind of statement. Mark has a lot of apocalyptic imagery, and this is one of them. The good news must first be proclaimed. So again, there is that image of the good news going out into the world, okay? And that's the manifestation of the Messiah in the world. And a celestial horseman in Greco-Roman culture, remember we relate all these images to the culture John is in? A celestial horseman in the Greco-Roman culture was depicted as a savior who helps people in trouble. So there was a mythology of a celestial horseman who would come forth and save people that were in trouble. So John may be relating that image in his culture to that. That's where we look for some kind of parallel in the culture that he's in, either pagan or the Roman culture. And this is one thing they found, okay? So those are the kind of the more positive images. The negative images of the white horseman are military conquest, the Antichrist or false messiahs. If you look at Mark 13:5-6, then Jesus began to say to them, beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, I am he, and they will lead many astray. So the negative image of the horseman is that it represents a false Messiah, the white horse. Because the real Messiah rides a white horse, but you know the real Messiah right away. The conqueror could be a false Messiah. Okay, that's a possibility. Also, the cultural image of the white horse, the bow, the conqueror, is of the sun god Mithras. Okay, same image, the sun god Mithras. A white horse, a crown, and a bow. So again, there's that cultural appropriation that John uses so well. Also, interestingly, the bow was not a Roman weapon. Yeah. The sword was. The spear was. The bow was not. The bow was a Greek and Asian weapon. So John is in Asia Minor, right? So the bow was an Asian Minor weapon, but it was not a weapon of the Roman army. They did not have bowmen. They fought in the phalanx with their spears. The Spartans didn't have them either. The Spartans, their strength was not through the bow, but through their ability to create, to create a defensive, like a tank, like a walking tank. There's this incredible, I gotta remember the name of it. There's an incredible video game about the Roman Empire, and it's very historically based, and you can form a phalanx and fight, and if you form it correctly, you cannot be beaten.
The turtle is what the Romans, they call it the turtle.
The turtle, yeah. And it was a tank. It was a walking tank. It was a walking tank. And you have to form it correctly. But if you do, and in this particular game, you attack like pagan castles, you attack pagan armies and structures, and they have bowmen. And the bowman can't do anything. But if you do it wrong, you're gone. So the bowman will wipe you out. It's really interesting. I mean, you really learn a lot from that game because they based it on historical fighting. It's really interesting. I wish I could find that game, but I don't have time for that. Anyway, I mean, I really don't. Who does? Who does, right? So, so these are kind of the negative and positive images of that first one, because the argument is if he comes out on a white horse, he doesn't really do anything negative, except come out. So what is his role? Who is he? And that's why we ask, is it a negative or is it a positive? Because remember, in Revelation, it can always be either one. Because from one point of view, judgment is a negative, but what about for the martyrs and for the church? Judgment's a positive, right? So if the bowman initiates judgment, then the bowman is a servant of God. Servant of God. And releases, the arrows are the things that represent the judgment itself. So this what I'm saying is this first horseman is a difficult, the next three are easy to interpret. Blood, death, sickness, they're easy. But this first one's tough. This first one is tough. And if you look at the importance of the order of things in Revelation, that first one is always significant. In the order of things. The first is always significant. And the first usually opens up to something else. Okay? So if we keep with that pattern, this first horseman opens up to something. So that's why we struggle with the interpretation of the bowman. We don't get nearly the complete image that we get in the next three. You see what I mean? So if you're wondering why I'm spending time on that, it's because of that. Who is this bowman? In Old Testament, was a symbol of divine chastisement. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword shall devour flesh with the blood of the slain and the captives from the long-haired enemy. That's from Deuteronomy. Here's another one from Psalms. He has prepared his deadly weapons, making his arrows fiery shafts. See how they conceive evil and are pregnant with mischief, and brings forth lies. So you see why we think that bow and arrow metaphor may hold for John, for the vision? Because here it is. The arrows are sent out as acts of judgment, see? The arrows. And in both cases, there is an assumed archer. There is an assumed archer, okay? So that's why we use the image of the bow and arrows, because it has actually an Old Testament equivalent to it. Does that make sense? So these things are grounded pretty much in what we in what we know, or what we think we know. Okay. So the four players of verse 8, I'm sorry, the four plagues of verse 8 may be the arrows of the first horseman: sword, famine, pestilence, and wild animals. Remember, we get to the end of the four horsemen, and the last horseman. In other words, at that last, let me run back to that real quick, so we can see that again. Let me run back to that passage. Sorry, it's way back. Let me grab it. Okay. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice down at the bottom here. When I opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature call out, "Come." And I looked, and there was a pale green horse. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed with him. They were given authority over the fourth of the earth to kill. And then what some commentators say is that these four are the result of all of this: sword, famine, pestilence, and wild animals. That they are the arrows of the first horse of the bow. That's just you see, it's just kind of a way of interpreting. What are these four? Is it the last horseman that releases these? No, that's a summary. That's a summary of what has been loosed upon the earth through the horsemen. Okay, through the horsemen. Okay, finally, notice that again. We see in the first horseman, a crown was given to him. Passive voice. Who gave him the crown? A crown was given to the first horseman. Who gave him that crown? It doesn't say, does it? And we see this passive voice a lot. I mean, it's a very common thing to see in Revelation. So we never know who actually gave the crown. We assume it's God, but we don't know. But the crown was given. In other words, the crown, the horseman didn't. What's the difference between the horseman, the first horseman, the white horse, being given the crown or taking the crown? The Lamb takes the scroll. The crown is given to the horseman. What kind of image does that present?
It's like being awarded a license or a contract.
Good. Like 007.
Yeah.
You got a license to kill. Yeah. It's giving authority over.
Right.
Yeah, very good. It's giving authority. So when we have to pay attention to taking and giving in Revelation, because each of them have significant importance, okay, to what's going on, to the interpretation of it. So this is a giving of the crown. The first horseman represents warfare. Now this is another interpretation. The first horseman represents warfare. The three horsemen that follow represent the usual evils of war: sword, famine, and plague. That's one interpretation of it. So that's possible, okay? That we're talking about, in other words, the total image of all four, we're talking about warfare. War being unleashed upon the earth. And what follows warfare is always the same thing. Always from warfare. Always. Is death, sword, famine, and plague. And they always follow, don't they? Today, do they do that? Yeah. What kind of plagues are we talking about as a result of warfare? What's the plagues of warfare?
Well, things like dysentery when the water gets corrupted.
Yeah.
Often cholera.
Cholera? Yeah. Just in the displacement of people, which always happens in war, doesn't it? The refugee camps are crowded together, and disease and pestilence, right? Okay, famine. What's going on in Venezuela right now?
Food's being used as a
People are going hungry. People are dying of hunger in Venezuela. And it's going to get worse if war breaks out, which it kind of already has. But that's an example of that. I mean, these things are the, so what I'm saying is, even though these images we want to kind of make literally, there's a truth to them. If the white horse represents war, these are the natural results of war. The natural results of it.
We were talking with somebody about British history. And
Yeah.
when an army came in to fight, they lived off the land. They stole everything. They
Everything.
stole all of the animals and all of the...
And then they burned it all leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so starvation would follow.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Why did Sherman burn everything in the South that he went through? Why? Why did he do that? What's the purpose of it?
Destroy the economy.
Destroy the economy?
And to do, so they had no support, no sustenance. There was no way to supply.
You starve the army.
The crops, the wages.
Yeah. Starve the army. This is just the nature of warfare. You know, it's like we've always tried in the 21st century and late 20th century to fight war in a different way. And it never works. Think of the war in Iraq. I mean, you had the same thing. You had death, you had famine, you had pestilence. And as many, and this is what's interesting, and we know this, as many die after the war is over. This is something I learned about World War II. The actual number of deaths was not based upon when the end of the war stopped. Included were those who died later from radiation, nuclear radiation, others who died from other things. If you read, oh gosh, it's amazing. If you read the story of post-World War II Germany, just in the first couple of years, how many people simply died because they couldn't get the resources to them in time, and sometimes the resources they got them would kill them. They couldn't eat that much, and if they ate it, they died. So you have to take another 5 years or so, and maybe even more. I mean, there's still people dying from nuclear radiation today, which they count as victims of the war. Yeah. Now, I'm not making a judgment here. I'm just saying that that's, that this is an appropriate image to use in regards to war. So the argument that the white horse may represent warfare is a pretty good one, actually. It's a pretty good one. So let's look at what happens with the, oh wait, I want to show you here. Again, we talk about cultural appropriation. There we go. There's the god Apollo with a bow. So again, Apollo, the image of Apollo plays a great role in Revelation. We've seen it over and over again. So Apollo being the primary god, one of the primary gods that's worshipped in Asia Minor, in these cities. We see it in the letters to the 7 churches. So here's Apollo with a bow. So again, these competing images of mythology versus what the church is claiming is reality. Okay? Let's go at what is happening. So, does that make any sense? I mean, that's kind of what there's another one of those cultural type of things, okay? The bow was associated with Apollo to symbolize his majesty. Apollo's arrows could bring death. So that's kind of where that image comes from. Any questions so far? So let's look at the red horse. The red horse, oops, sorry. So immediately we associate the red horse with bloodshed. That would make sense. In fact, in this Middle Ages illustration, he's carrying a sword. Blood. The sword represents blood. And then in what we see is, so the question was, okay, what does it say about, what is the image? Let's read the red horseman, about the red horse separately. Starting with verse 4. Somebody read verse 4. If you have it with you, I'll read it.
And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people would slaughter one another. And he was given a great sword.
Okay. Now, taking peace from the earth.
But That's assuming that there was peace.
Was there an understanding of peace in the time of Rome?
The Pax Romana.
The Pax Romana. There it is. That's a coin celebrating the Pax Romana. How was the Pax Romana enforced?
With force.
With force.
You will enjoy it.
Yes. And Augustus was declared to be a god because Augustus had created this great peace through conquering the Pax Romana, right? Which is so appropriate in John's time to say, this is a false peace. This is because it was a get in line. If you want peace, get in line. I mean, how was Jesus crucified? The chief priest of the temple wanted to keep peace with Rome. They knew they were on the edge of being overrun. That it would only take one thing, and they knew the people were on the edge of rebellion. Literally right on the edge. And they were waiting for whoever could be proclaimed Messiah. So whenever somebody came forward to be proclaimed Messiah, they either killed them or they proved to the people that they weren't the Messiah. They couldn't do that with Jesus. That caused them a big headache. Peace when there is no peace. There's Jeremiah. Peace when there is no peace. So this could be, the taking away of the peace could very much be, if you look at it in John's time, a reaffirmation of the idea, there is no peace. There is no peace. It's a forced peace. It's a peace of slavery, a peace of oppression. Because while it's peaceful for some in Rome or in the provinces, for the Christians, it's not peaceful at all. They're getting slaughtered. And there's that word, slaughtered. Yeah. That is definitely a persecution word. So when you see slaughter, that's a persecution word. In the Greek, it had persecution implications. The large sword represents authority. The large sword, the red with the horseman carries, represents authority. The interpretation, and this is interesting, the interpretation precedes the symbol. Usually the symbol precedes the interpretation. But this is a little bit of a literary reversal in that. Okay? Again, and out came another horse, bright red. Its rider, here's the interpretation, was permitted to take peace from the earth so that people would slaughter one another. And then he explains how. And he was given a great sword. Normally it would be he was given a crown and a bow. Here he is given, and then what happens? Here this is why, and he's given a sword. So and why do we highlight that? Because we want to look at these little changes, these little reversals. They mean something literarily usually, okay? Nothing to dwell on. Let's look at Romans 13:14 here. For it is God's servant for your good. But if you do what is wrong, you should be afraid. For the authority does not bear the sword in vain. It is the servant of God to execute wrath on the wrongdoer. This is Paul. What's Paul talking about? But if you do what is wrong, you should be afraid. For the authority does not bear the sword in vain. It is the servant of God to execute wrath on the wrongdoer. This passage, it makes a lot of Christians uncomfortable. Yeah, it does. It does. This is Romans 13:4. Here is Paul defending authority.
Let's see what Romans, I'm sorry.
Romans 13, yeah. Here is Paul defending authority. Why would Paul want to defend authority? Remember, the sword is the symbol of Roman authority. It's the symbol of the emperor. It's the symbol of the soldiers. And why? So why would Paul want to defend Roman authority?
He was a citizen of Rome.
Good.
Used Roman authority for his benefit.
Remember, Paul is writing in the earliest times of the church. And what's his great fear for the church? What's his great fear?
That it'll disappear.
Why will it disappear?
The Romans will do away with it.
Exactly correct. Exactly correct.
Don't fight City Hall, is what I'm saying.
And why would the Romans do away with the church? Why? After all, what is the true declaration of the church? What's the difference between the true declaration of the church and back then how it could be perceived? It went right back to the resurrection, to the death of Jesus. What did they accuse Jesus of doing? What was he accused of? Of being what?
Of being a king.
A king, which makes him what in the Roman Empire?
Well, he was a rebel rouser.
A traitor.
Traitor.
You only crucified traitors. You only crucified those who, even the thieves and so forth, who were perceived to stand against the Roman Empire. That's who you crucified. Crucifixion was reserved for traitors. Even Roman citizens who were judged as traitors were crucified. Yeah, they could kill themselves. They were given a sword, opportunity to kill yourself. If they didn't take the sword, they were crucified. Most of them took the sword. But yeah, and we understand why. So here's Paul going, we don't want the Roman government to perceive that we are fomenting rebellion. That's not what Christianity is about. Christianity is not about revolution. It's about salvation and repentance and living the life, the Christian life, okay, as the church. Paul gets a lot of criticism, right? I'm going to do a little aside here. And rightly so. Paul says things that to our time and our day sound so ridiculous to us. But you got to remember his cultural situation. He was striving to save the church. He was frightened that the church was, because remember, the church wasn't an institutional thing. It was a movement. And anytime you've got a movement, you've got all kinds of stuff percolating, don't you? And one of the things that percolated in the movement was, this is our means of conquering Rome. Paul was desperate to not let that happen. He was desperate. He wanted the church, he was almost hiding the church in the law. And that's why he's saying to the church, respect the authority. Because even though it's negative, it is still God's, is it God's punishment? No, it's God's way of preserving the church.
It's our umbrella.
Their umbrella. Their umbrella. Even today, do we say in a blanket way, defy the law? Do we say that in a blanket way? No. Do we say overthrow America? Or overthrow anything? No, we don't. Why? Because it's more important that we continue to be. Right? It's more important that we continue to be as much as we can. So you see why. I mean, that's why here we see in this image from Paul, the sword is a positive. It helps the church continue, the sword of authority, okay? The sword of authority. And it judges lawlessness. It judges lawlessness. And remember, for John, it was lawless for the church to be persecuted. It was lawless for them to be persecuted. Because a lot of these local persecutions were built upon the actual violation of law rather than at the force of law. At the force of law. That's how Judaism was able to continue. It had the umbrella of the law, right? Paul sees that. He wants the umbrella of the law to rest upon Christianity again. Didn't work out until Constantine came along. But it didn't really work out. Finally it did. But Paul is really trying to make that happen. He wants Christianity to get the same privilege of existence that Judaism got. That makes sense? And why did they protect? Why did the Roman Empire protect the Jews or the Jewish religion? Why?
Well, it was a legalistic religion. It was something that they could.
It was ethical.
Yeah.
It was ethical. And even though, and Rome didn't believe in Yahweh, but Rome loved the ethic. They loved the ethic. Remember, the pagan and the Roman gods weren't very ethical, right? I mean, they were not ethical at all. So they really respected a religion that was ethical. Okay, so anyway, and then we have the sword. This is one of the emperors. I forget which one. The sword, as we know, was called the ius gladii. The ius gladii, the right of the sword. It was the right of capital punishment exercised by the emperor and given to delegated provincial officials such as Pontius Pilate and others. They were delegated to use the ius gladii, okay, or the ius gladii, the right of the sword. So the image, the red horse, could simply be, if you wanted to interpret it a particular way, it could simply be the Roman government. I mean, or not. Let's make it broader. Government acting in the world, and what does the government bring? The sword. Right? Are we about to? It looks like we're about to get another engagement, aren't we? We're working toward it real hard, right? Right? It may happen, it may not, but we're looking for the next war. We're just kind of shopping for it right now. Could be Venezuela, could be Iran, but we're shopping, right? Yeah. That's what governments do. They fight.
It's a good distraction for what's going on.
Not just for distraction. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It can be political. It can also be for other reasons as well. A perceived threat. Perceived threat. I mean, yeah, it can be for lots of reasons that we do that. But we do. We just do. I mean, and all governments do. I mean, even a government that proclaims not to do that can be forced into it. Can be forced into it. So, any questions about that? Okay? All right. Now, let's go to the next one, the black horse. Okay, the black horse, scarcity or famine. Okay, and you can see the balance and the hunger look on the black horse. Okay, the black horseman. Okay, black was a universal symbol in John's time for death and darkness. Why would darkness be a symbol of death in John's time? Why? Well, the black plague was later, and that's black as a metaphor. But think about darkness in John's time.
Well, in a number of primitive cultures before electric lights,
yes,
to go out in the darkness was risky. That's where the danger was, because you couldn't see what was sneaking up on you. There could be wild animals.
It's hard for us to imagine, unless you traveled in places where there are zero lighting, how simply dangerous it is to go out into the dark. And believe me, these cultures, they were inside by the time the sun went down. You were not out. The darkness was preserved for bad things. Robberies. One of my favorite stories is Oliver Twist, the way Copperfield wrote it. And in that culture of Oliver Twist time, all the bad characters act during the night. They don't do much of anything in the day. They're always out at night running around. Because that's the time for the bad people. We don't think that way today because we have lights. We think of a 24-hour culture. We have electric lights. But in that time, you did not go out past dark. But besides, you never knew what was coming at you. I mean, heck, I can't walk through my house in the middle of the night without stumbling over something in the dark. I mean, if there's no lights at all, I'm going to stumble and hit something. And it's going to hurt, So it's natural. It's a natural image for us, for the black horse to be associated with darkness. And in the darkness comes death. Zechariah associated it with famine. The first chariot had red horses, the second chariot black horses, the third chariot white horses. We looked at that before. The fourth chariot dapple gray horses. And for Zechariah, the idea was famine. So pretty much we're following that same game plan here. And famine, of course, the result of the release of the sword on the earth. Now, let's talk about this balance, and then we'll conclude today, okay? This will be a good place to stop. Let's talk about the balance, because this is really important. There's an actual first century BC bronze balance scale, okay? That was actually for sale, for auction somewhere. Balance scales are mentioned throughout the Old Testament, and they were generally rigged to cheat customers. Here, let me give you an example. Here we go, look.
Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that. Here we go. This is Proverbs. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but an accurate weight is his delight. Honest balances and scales are the Lord's. All the weights in the bag are his work. Differing weights are an abomination to the Lord, and false scales are not good. That's all Proverbs. Then Isaiah. Those who lavish gold from the purse and weigh out silver in the scales, they hire a goldsmith who makes it into a god, then they fall down and worship. Scales, so scales represented treachery, they represented wrong dealing, crookedness, deception, and that's an important image for us now to look at here as we see the black horse come forth with the scales. And so the image of the scales is linked to the image of famine. Why? Here's why. Read it. When I break your staff of bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in a single oven, and they shall dole out your bread by how? Weight. And though you eat, you shall not be satisfied. When you have to weigh the bread, you're in the midst of a famine. Then he said to me, Mortal, I'm going to break the staff of bread in Jerusalem. They shall eat bread by weight and with fearfulness, and they shall drink water by measure and in dismay. So we see that the scale is clearly a symbol of famine, of what happens in war to resources, okay? And we also see, then I heard a voice, and we talked about that, the red horse. I heard a voice and come, and then the black horse. Its rider, I looked, and there was a black horse. Its rider, a pair of scales in his hand, and I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures. That voice is God, because it comes from the midst of the four living creatures. But John doesn't identify it as God, because in the vision, John hears it. John doesn't see God. John hears God, but not see God. And unidentified heavenly voices are common in Revelation. The voice from the midst of the cherubim is assumed to be God. And what does the voice say? Read what the voice says.
A quart of wheat
Uh-huh.
for a day's wages, 3 quarts of barley for a day's wages. Do not damage the oil and the wine.
Well, I thought this was going to be easy. There were like 30 pages devoted to this one part of the verse. That's how many interpretations there are. I did not nearly share with you, do not share with you nearly all of them. But let's talk about it, okay? All right. Wheat and barley and oil and wine. That amount, the denarius, was about 8 times the cost of wheat during John's time, and 5.5 times the cost of barley. So we're talking about inflation, right? And not just ordinary inflation, devastating inflation. A denarius was a day's wage for the ordinary worker. So you're talking about 1 liter, or what's called a choinix. It was called a choinix in Greek. 1 choinix of wheat, 8 days of work. 8 days of work. Huh?
I didn't even get that.
Yeah.
It says a quart of wheat.
It's a liter. But a choinix is simply, but we're interpreting, that's an translation of it. The actual word in Greek is choinix.
Oh, okay.
So if you go back, a choinix was about a liter.
About a liter.
About a liter, yeah. But more important here is not what it was, the amount, but the fact it was 8 times that for 1 denarius. 8 days of work. So imagine what's the average wage for a person today for 1 day in this country? to multiply that by 8 to buy 1 loaf of bread. That's what we call inflation. Yeah, bad inflation. And again, that's connected to war and famine or drought. The term for leader in the Greek is a choinix, C-H-O-I-N-I-X, which is not obviously the Greek letters, that's how you pronounce it, which is roughly equal to a day's ration of wheat for one person. A choinix is a day's ration of wheat for one person, okay? In the Greek culture. 1 choinix of wheat, there's barley and wheat right there, okay? There's barley and wheat. 1 choinix of wheat and 3 choinixes of barley is the appropriate ratio for a cavalry rider and a horse, okay? In that time. So the cavalry rider had 1 choinix of wheat, 3 choinixes of barley for the horse. The wheat was for the rider, the barley was for the horse, okay? And then, there's the Roman cavalry rider, by the way. I just wanted to show that to you. That's a nice relief there of the cavalry rider. I saw a cool one. I couldn't get the illustration on the slide, but it showed every part of the cavalry rider's outfit, but it didn't show them carrying the food, so I didn't use it. Okay, and then...
Help me. Question. When it says a quart of wheat for a day's pay and 3 quarts of barley for a day's pay, are those summed, or is that an or?
What do you mean? 1 quart of wheat.
And 3 quarts of barley.
And 3 quarts of barley.
That's
For
1 day.
1 day.
Okay,
Exactly
so
correct.
it's an and.
Yeah, it's an and. Yes.
Not an or.
It's an, yeah, it's not an or. Good point. Well, actually, it can be an or too.
Well, I thought those maybe were equivalents, but you're saying no, added together.
Yeah. Exactly correct. So for a slave, and here's a nice fresco of a slave or tiles. You see, the slave had 1 choinix of barley, and 1/2 choinix per day was the normal ration for a slave. So obviously the poor slaves are the ones who suffer the most, right? Because 1 choinix of barley, which is the poorer bread, and 1/2 choinix per day of wheat, just 1/2 per day was their ration. So in the image, it's 8 choinixes a day for 1. And that's not even enough to feed even close to feeding the slave. Slave is going to starve for 8. And so then just double the money it would take. Wheat was the grain of preference for baking bread. We know that, obviously. Barley was used to feed horses and make beer. It was also kind of the poorer bread, the poor person's bread. I love this from Judges. In the Roman world, but not only, except for the poor, where it was cheap and poor quality. This is from these 3 passages talk about barley. When Gideon arrived, there was a man telling a dream to his comrade, and he said, I had a dream, and in it a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian and came to the tent and struck it so that it fell. It turned upside down, and the tent collapsed. It must have been really heavy, barley bread. A man came from Baal Shalisha, bringing food from the first fruits to the man of God, 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain in his sack. Elisha said, give it to the people and let them eat. My favorite is this last passage here, okay? There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But where are they among so many people? What is significant about the fact that Jesus uses barley instead of wheat to create the miracle? What's significant about that?
That was the poor.
That was the poor food of the poor. But he creates abundance of good food. Yeah. So there's that same image of the wine being good wine that Jesus created. He turned the water into wine. It was good wine. Here he takes the barley and makes it into wonderful bread. That's God's, the theology of abundance in the New Testament. Okay, so in the religion of Rome, a shortage of grain was considered to be what's called a prodigium, a divinely sent sign foreshadowing a disaster. Portents and prodigies This is in the time of Roman Empire. Signs that, if understood or interpreted correctly, can reveal personal destinies and the will of the gods. They may be observed and interpreted either by the person who witnessed them or more usually by a priest specializing in the signs required. Portents and prodigies are one of the sources of the art of divination. The diviner, who is capable of predicting the future, could have recourse either to the exegesis of observed signs or to prophetic inspiration, a kind of delirium deriving from his possession by some divinity who comes into contact with diviners, sibyls, or Pythian priestesses. So why do I bring that in? Because there's that relation to the culture that John's in. In other words, readers outside the culture of this would immediately recognize the sign of the inflation or the sign of the wheat and the barley as a prodigium, a judgment by a god. It was a sign of judgment. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Or does it not?
There'll be a test on this, Al.
It's a sign of judgment. Again, the reason I bring that up is because I want to be sure that we relate these images to what's going on in John's culture. Because it had to be understandable. It had to be understandable for the people who read it in John's culture. How would they understand this if they read it? They go, oh, that's a judgment by a God. It's a sign of something to come. It's a sign of something to come. In other words, the result of the warfare, whatever it is a judgment. It's not just a thing that happens. It's intentional. There is a judgment being made. And that's how it was understood. As a prodigy, as a judgment, okay? Or prodigium, as a judgment, okay? So that's why if you wonder why I put that in, it's because I always want to relate to those who are reading this in John's time, how they would have looked at it. The use of a denarius for the wheat and 3 liters for the barley is significant. 1 denarius, as I said, was a full day's wage. Normally, a liter of wheat was 1/8 of a denarius. Or a choinix was 1/8 of a denarius. While a liter of barley was 1/16 of a denarius. And here I want to show you. I just kind of picked up a curve. There you go. There's Venezuela right there. Now, I assume that 1600, what is the currency in Venezuela? I didn't look it up. I assume that's really expensive.
Yeah.
And it is, I'm sure. 1,600 Venezuelan dollars for one. Or Venezuelan something. But we can assume it's really expensive, right? A sign of chaos, a sign of warfare, a sign of a culture being judged. That's how it would have been interpreted in John's day. So in Revelation 7:3, which is coming up, do not damage the earth or the sea or the trees until we have marked the servants of our God with a seal on their foreheads. Remember, we talked about proportionality, but do not damage the olive oil and the wine. Here's a big argument. This is what I was talking about. Do not damage the oil and the wine. Boy, that can be interpreted a lot of different ways. When you hear it, as you've heard it before, how do you interpret that? Inflation for the barley and the wheat, but do not touch the oil and the wine. How would you interpret that? What sense does that make? Think about it. There's a lot of ways we can interpret this. So the voice says, yes, judge inflation for the barley and the wheat. What's the difference? Okay, let's look at one view. What's the difference between barley and wheat and oil and wine? What's the difference between the...
Well, barley and wheat is something we eat every day.
Good.
The oil and the wine would
There
be
is
more like
process.
luxuries, or oil could be an offering.
Now interpret that. That one is a basic staple for life. The other could be considered luxuries. So interpret that now.
So the poor are going to suffer more than the rich.
Very good. Okay. That's one interpretation. The poor will suffer over the rich.
Well, that would be true if you skip the wine and the oil.
Sure, sure. But there's other ways to interpret it. There's other ways to interpret it,
I
okay?
think of the grains as being an annual. I'm a master gardener.
Very good, very good.
Whereas the olive tree takes a long time.
And what else? The olive tree and the vineyard.
The vineyard takes a long
They
time.
have to be cultivated.
Just goes to show you that the farmer's on the short end of the stick all the time.
Excellent. Now you're dipping into the history of the time. Domitian, the emperor, at the time that John is writing, he issued an edict. And he ordered those who kept the vineyards and the olive trees, the vineyards, to not plant anymore. And in fact, to tear up a percentage of their vineyards and plant wheat and barley. Why? Because of famine. And do you think the keepers of the olive trees and the vineyards liked it? They almost went to war with him over it. Because the main place that oil and the vineyards came from was Asia Minor. Asia Minor, the provinces. Italy had it too. And in fact, some of the commentaries argue that the reason Domitian did it was to inflate the Italian wine and oil so that it would be worth more money. So what do? You destroy the imports. You destroy the imports. It would be kind of like a tariff. You make them higher than the Italian oil and wine. Yeah, the Italian oil and wine. That's another philosophy about that.
We've been there with set-asides.
Exactly, exactly. However, but here's some tricky stuff about, and you're all hitting right on the interpretations. However, there's some tricky stuff here. Oil and wine was not considered a luxury. It was not considered a luxury. It was a staple. It was a staple. Wine would be a staple because they had nothing, their water wasn't clean. So fermented wine, and when they talk about wine, they're not talking about hardcore. It was mixed with water and cut down. So it was basically a staple. So it's kind of hard to make the farmer versus the landowner type argument there. But it could be. Here's the difference. It's proportionality again. It's proportionality. Now this is probably the best interpretation because it's consistent with Revelation. Judge this part, but don't touch this part. Why would you judge the wine before you judge the oil and the wine? I mean, judge the barley and the wheat, because that's what's going to get your attention, right? But don't destroy everything. Don't destroy everything. I think you may be onto something with the sacrifice as well. That's interesting. Wine and oil were ritual sacrifices in religion.
But so was grain. Ephah grain was.
Yeah.
But isn't an oil, to make oil and to make wine is a process.
Yes.
It takes a lot more
Yes.
than just if you grow barley
Yep.
and you harvest it.
Yes.
Yes, it's done. But to oil, you've got to harvest the olives. You have to
Yeah.
harvest
Totally
the
correct.
grapes.
Yep.
And then you have to go through the process of making.
So that comes back to proportionality again.
Well,
Where do you get the most immediate effect? Not from the oil and the wine, but from the wheat and the barley. That's where you get the most immediate effect. That's where you hurt the most. But the wine and the oil, I'm not going to destroy everything. And we see that consistently in Revelation. We see it all the time. We see a quarter of the earth, a quarter of this, half of this. Never the whole thing. And that is not like Jewish apocalyptic at all. You guys have been so patient. I'm sorry to have kept you this long. But you guys have been so patient. But I just wanted to get through the black horse, because next week we'll finish with the pale horse. And then we'll be done. And I knew some of you are leaving, won't be here next week, so I wanted to finish it up. So the scarcity of wheat and barley is a partial judgment. But it also, John always writes ironically. If we're talking about the John of the Gospel too, irony is one of his keys. So it could be irony that the poor people's food is destroyed before the rich is. In other words, it could be like humans would say, oh, we're going to take care of our stuff. The rich will take care of our stuff, but we'll let them starve. That could be John's irony right there. That could be John's irony. So the use of irony for that. So forth and so on. So I talked about Domitian's edict, but really most scholars don't think that the edict was that it wasn't really about the edict, but it was there during that time. So if you're looking for relevant historical stuff happening to explain that kind of statement, but it's a tough statement. How do we explain that? I think the proportionality argument is really important because it's consistent in Revelation. Judgments are not total. They're partial. Why? To wake you up. To wake you up. There's always a chance. Even up to the very last thing in Revelation, there is always a chance to reverse your actions. Always. Always. And that's different from apocalyptic. Even, up to the very end, and we'll see that when we get to it. It'll be, you'll see over and over again, will you repent? No. Will you repent? No. Will you believe? No. Okay, that's the end of it. We're there. Boom. And like I said, by that time, you have intentionally stood against God, a revealed God, and made your choice. See what I mean? A revealed God. We've even gone beyond what we experience here, but a revealed God, you've made your choice. So anyway, okay, we'll finish there, and then next week I'll finish up the Pale Horse and have it on recording for those of you who won't, and then we'll see you in the fall. Fair enough? Let's have a word of prayer and we'll be on our way. Lord, thank you so much for bringing us here this day, for the love that you give to us, the grace that comes from you. Keep us in your loving care and your peace always. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Thank you all. Thank you all.